Well, I might well, apologies, Dan, but I might well challenge the orthodoxy of the assumption. Shocking, not shocking. I think, yes, there are definite changes in the way that we work, right? And since the Stone Age, technology has morphed what we do when it is introduced.
Yo, it's the future, don't hit the snooze. AI is here giving humans the boost. Team Humans rolling, brains in the game with Dan Turchin. Y'all remember the name. People laying in the mix, no stopping the flow. Better work, better life, yeah, we're ready to go. Robots and humans, a collab, you know. Okay, let's start the show.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're listening. Welcome back to AI in the Future of Work, episode 380. I'm your host, Dan Turchin, CEO of PeopleRain, the AI platform for IT and HR employee service. Thank you for being a member of Team Human. We've been doing this for about 6 years, and thanks to you, this global community has grown to more than 1 million listeners. If you like what we do, give us a like and a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your audio. If you haven't yet, subscribe to our newsletter. We started it, probably about a year ago. And we share some fun facts and some clips that don't always make it into the main episode. We'll share a link, of course, in the show notes. We are all in this together. If you like what we do, share it with just one friend. Pay it forward. It's what we all do to keep this community thriving. If you leave a comment, I may share it in an upcoming episode, like this one from Melanie in Hartford, Connecticut. Hello, Melanie. Melanie's favorite episode is number 67, way back in the archives, with Charlene Lee, best-selling author of The Disruption Mindset. Of course, we'll share a link to that great conversation. We learn from AI Thought Leaders Weekly, and the added bonus, you get one AI fun fact. Here it is for this week. Hugh Cameron writes in Newsweek that Walmart celebrates automation as U.S. job cuts reach multi-year high. Walmart executives have acknowledged the potential impact of AI on their workforce, with CEO Doug McMillon predicting that every job we've got is going to change in some way. However, Walmart expects its global headcount to remain flat at around 2.1 million over the next 3 years. Walmart's employing AI in everything from demand forecasting to inventory and logistics management. AI is now either writing or assisting in the generation of 40% of all new software code. In Walmart US, more than 60% of stores now receive some freight from automated distribution centers, and more than 50% of e-commerce fulfillment center volume is now automated. US-based employers announced 153,074 job cuts in the last month alone. That's a 175% increase from 55,597 1 year prior. Lots more interesting commentary in that one. Of course, we'll share the link to the full article. My commentary: Walmart is typical of most employers with large volumes of frontline workers. AI is improving efficiency and delaying future hiring growth, but not contributing to job elimination. Demand increases from AI-related marketing and new product launches mean there's actually more work to do, which will eventually outstrip the productivity gains from AI. The reality of delayed hiring means there are fewer jobs in traditional roles for new employees entering the workforce. That said, there's increasing demand for workers in growing fields like AI supervision, AI training, data labeling, healthcare, and construction. Throughout history, there's always been a need for workers whose skills match the current economy. AI is a particularly disruptive force, but now is no different. We'll continue that important conversation in the weeks ahead. Now, shifting to this week's conversation, which is quite relevant to that fun fact. Adrian McDermott has led the product management and engineering teams at Zendesk since 2010. In 2021, he moved into the chief technology officer role. Previously, he served as CTO at Attributor. Adrian was the first engineer hired by Plumtree Software. I remember Plumtree, and remained with the company through its IPO and subsequent acquisition by BEA. He also serves on the board of directors for Be My Eyes, a visual assistance app, and previously for Mandiant, a security software company. He holds a degree in computer science from De Montfort University in Leicester, England, which is, of course, home to the Leicester City Foxes, 2015 Premier League champions. Adrian, without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome you to AI in the Future of Work. Let's get started by having you share a bit more about that illustrious background and how you got to where you are today.
Cool. Thank you, Dan. Great to be on. Long time listener, first time caller. Really appreciate the invite. Yeah, I grew up in computer science, software engineering. Was an itinerant developer in Asia for a little while, Hong Kong, Guam, and Sydney, and then ended up in San Francisco. I've done three startups, two hits and a miss. I count Zendesk as one of the hits. And since 2010, when I began, there was like a dozen people in product development, and I grew that team to about 1,500 as we went from 3 billion run rate revenue to a billion and 5,000 to 100,000 customers. Interestingly, when I started, we had no salespeople. It was all product-led growth. Those were great times. And now we're transitioning really into the AI era. I'm focused a lot on strategy, and I run the corporate development functions, so mergers and acquisitions.
It's an amazing story for those who, I think Zendesk is now a household name for everyone, but for those who haven't heard about that great rocket ride that you've been on, maybe take us back to 2010 and the culture that Mikkel and the founding team kind of created, and what has kind of defined your journey at Zendesk?
Well, I think I'd been working, the Mist startup I did in the middle. We built great technology, but we weren't solving a relevant enough business problem for pull from the customers. And what I saw at Zendesk was really that they built something that people really wanted and really needed. And the idea was, customer service at the time was difficult. We had the rituals of contact centers with wait times, standard operating procedure, manuals, these kinds of things. And, it was viewed as a cost center. They were not well trained, kind of lowly paid employees. And we would give them, the standard practice at the time was to give them a big ring binder of information and say, this is what you do. And then Zendesk came along and they're like, well, what someone needs to do is take the best of consumer web technology, which was emerging at the time, and the best practices of the best customer service exemplars on the World Wide Web, and democratize those two things, democratize the technology and democratize the service expertise so that 100,000 businesses can turn this on with a few clicks, and get going and be able to provide excellent service to their customers, right? And so for me, what I came to realize was it was really all about convention over configuration. It was about having an opinionated view of how technology should be implemented so that the folks we were serving, who were frankly dealing with somewhere between too many and infinity inquiries from their customers, could easily understand, configure, get going, and alter the customer journeys they provided, and better connect with their employees, with their customers, with their consumers.
One of the things that I find unique, having been in and around the Zendesk ecosystem for a long time, almost as long as you have, is that customers love Zendesk. They're fanatical about it. And traditionally, customers don't love enterprise software. It's a tax that they pay. Nobody wakes up and says, I can't wait to use more SAP or Oracle, but they actually love using Zendesk. And I know I'm going to make your head swell a little bit, but I know that's been very intentional. To talk us through kind of the difference between like the last startup you said didn't really have product market fit, and then when you've achieved legendary product market fit with Zendesk. How do you think differently about product?
I think much of it comes down to understanding, in my mind, the personas that you're serving, right? There's the buyer, configurer, owner of the problem space. And those could be all the same person. This could be different people. This could be the same person as the next persona, which is the customer service agent. And then there's the final, persona, which is the end user, consumer, partner, the person seeking help. And I think in each case, I think what we've tried to do is look at what, at the time it was mostly social media apps, but what the best apps of the web were doing for onboarding and serving and taking people through journeys. And then as customer service developed, and I think it has, the rituals have changed and developed significantly, even pre-generative AI in the last 10 years. As those things changed, helping people meet the expectations, but always for us, with that focus on this core piece of application real estate. Customer service agents sit and look at the same screen 8 hours a day. It'd be nice if that screen was optimized for them, for their experience, and was somewhat pleasurable to use, and that they could have a little bit of configuration and control and agency over how it was used. And I think those principles of really empathetically understanding who we serve and what is important to them have led to that measurement, right? And even when we measure NPS today, Net Promoter Score, so you survey people, you say, how likely are you to recommend this product, Zendesk to other people? We divide those results by persona. It's like buyer versus admin versus agent. And it's important to do that, right? To track. We might, you drop your prices, the buyer might be really happy, but maybe you cut a feature that makes the agent unhappy. And you're always balancing your constituency and understanding what you are doing for them and what it is that's on their top 10 feature list that they need you to build.
So your target persona that you just mentioned, the customer service agent, is on a short list of roles that are likely to be eliminated. Certainly, not a shocker to any of our listeners. It's entry level developers and it's customer support agents. How do you navigate the kind of tricky space right now between building agentic software that potentially automates away the need for the customer service reps that got you to where you are today?
Well, I might well, apologies, Dan, but I might well challenge the orthodoxy of the assumption. Shocking, not shocking. I think, yes, there are definite changes in the way that we work, right? And since the Stone Age, technology has morphed what we do when it is introduced. You raised two great examples, and I think they're super accurate and germane to the discussion. How we code and how we serve our customers, right? And I happen to know a little bit about both. My 10,000 hours are in C++. Not something I do a lot of now, even with vibe coding, but that's where it comes from. And I think there aren't organizations out there who are adopting, these incredible tools, Cursor, GitHub Copilot, Claude Code. We use all of them at Zendesk, of course. I think 85% of our developers use one of those tools weekly. And there aren't people out there consuming those tools at the moment, in my opinion, who are saying, you know what, I have enough software. I have no more roadmap to build. I have no more customer needs to serve. I think what people are saying is like, oh, this unlocks so much potential. I can experiment more. I can do more. I can serve more. I can deliver more and deliver more value. I think generally what we're seeing is in code land, in AI generated software engineering land, is this move towards actually being able to deliver what is needed, and folks either paying down their technical debt or innovating in ways that would not have been possible without that productivity or the ability to build like that. That's coding. Let's jump to customer service. It's actually kind of exactly the same in an analogous way. Everyone, customer service leaders out there and employee service leaders out there, they aren't sitting there saying, you know what, my service is perfect. I have enough service, right? Everyone has a service debt. The most common thing we see amongst, we serve three primary sort of cohorts of customer, right? Users of Zendesk: business to consumer, business to business, and business to employee. Think about business to consumer. One of the most common, and business to business, frankly, one of the most common things that they do, given some level of automation or human augmentation with our Copilot implementation, they begin to think about, well, I can now serve my customers 24/7 on more channels. I can make these channels available. I can provide richer generative search into self-service. I can turn more things on. I can serve more customers. And then they're actually using this peacetime benefit of the technology to do that. At the same time, they are looking at, maybe, I think it's true to say, some of the more repetitive, lower skilled work that happens in a customer service department, and thinking to themselves, well, do I need a business process outsourcer in optimizing for the cost of labor in another geography? that maybe isn't, providing the same level of service as my own service and could be replaced, right? I think, yes, we're definitely seeing a shift in terms of how you deploy those roles, how you use those roles, and how much you need those roles. But at the same time, it's kind of a wash at the moment because of the way that technology is being deployed to pay down the service debt. I think um, I'll pause there, but I think we could also then talk about what about the specific roles in customer service and have a ton of thoughts on that too.
One of the things that always seems ironic to those outside of this space is that, well, as a consumer, you think that when you call the service desk, there's some all-knowing being that, picks up the phone and just is waiting for you to call about your problem. And in fact, um, the scariest time in the life of a customer service rep is when the phone rings and you're kind of exposed for, needing to learn on the fly. So I think it's underappreciated how much of an opportunity there is to better enable the service agent to provide a great customer experience with AI. So I'm glad you pointed that out, and I'm glad you took the bait. So I do want to go in that direction that you said. So building AI features, I want to know, specifically now that we're living in the real world of making humans better with AI. How do you do that? What are some of the features that you prioritize, given that that's kind of the real objective here?
Yeah. I think about it as if I think about our customer on the other side of the table, what they're trying to do is manage their risk for maximal benefit, build trust in our software and in the technology as a whole. One of the challenges is we have this technology, and any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic, right? And lots of people see this technology and they use it and they're like, oh, this is unbelievable. What could I do here? And it's easy to build a prototype, right? Anyone can build a prototype of a chatbot. I think the other experience that all of our users have is those random hallucinations and terrible answers and asking for the same image to be generated 25 times over and over again because it keeps giving you six fingers, or like the text is in, Chinese or whatever, and fixing that. And so people are very risk averse because they know that these systems are non-deterministic. And the job of a company like Zendesk is to make them deterministic in these scenarios, or to the extent that is possible. And so we think about at the lowest risk portion of the continuum that it is true, that Google, Yahoo, Alta Vista, if you're old enough, all of these technologies taught a generation of humans in the mid 90s and beyond how to type words into a box and get the 10 blue links they were looking for. Generative AI has come along. It can read the 10 blue links. It can read your question. It can summarize an answer. And it can actually say, hey, Dan, here's the answer to the question that you asked. I read 14 documents, and this is what it was supposed to say. This is, we call this retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, if you want to be technical. But ultimately, Google, I think, are calling it generative search. It's a shift in the way two generations of humans have actually found information. And it's very, very profound. First thing to do, and this is the reason that in Zendesk we built this feature, and then we made it available to all of our customers. We have tens of thousands, up to 50,000 knowledge bases live at any point for our customers. And we want those to be available to really answer the questions, not just provide 10 blue links. And that is the easiest way to get people on board. Then you go up the stack of complexity. And you raised the point about the customer service agent on the other side of the telephone. Like, how is it for them? Okay, we've established that training regimens are not maybe as robust as they could. Also, that if someone is calling in, it's a high probability actually that is a new or previously unseen issue or problem, right? You are creating knowledge in many cases, and I think that's an underappreciated aspect of customer service, right? The first place standard operating procedure is invented in your organization is in the chat window. It's on the phone, and it's by the human on the other, that you employ on the other side, who creatively comes up with something, right? And so what we are trying to do for those folks with our Copilot implementation is go beyond just those basic text completion algorithms to say this is kind of the thing that you should say. Hi Dana, how are you doing today? How can I help you? You can go way beyond that. And so we've taken that to step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, where now you can identify the intent of the user and the sentiment, and you can define entire procedures. And then, an agentic model, AI large language model, will actually like go and interact with other systems in the background and pull information about this user. Will complete the entire task. That has a bunch of effects, right? Yes, it is a wonderful productivity benefit, and who doesn't like a productivity benefit? But it is also an excellent training regimen, right? What you really want in a contact center, in customer service, in employee service, in a help desk, is it's always the same thing, right? It's like you want high quality, consistent answers no matter who you get in the chat window or who you get on the phone. And if you want to level up all your agents to be as good as the best, this is, I think, fundamentally the best way to do it. You're reducing the training cycles, but you're also in that moment delivering great service. And so we think that's fundamentally important. We've seen huge growth in our Copilot product in the last year. And actually our AI products overall have gone from 0 to 200 million in about 18 months as a result of that. And I think it's also important to realize that, in my opinion, this speaks to the way that generative AI has been deployed by application makers like Zendesk. I think Zendesk is in the vanguard here, where it's really a deep understanding of where value can be added in the value chain and in the process and in the things that your system does, and then an ability to take actions, right? You're going to move from being a structured system of record where we record data about the conversation to being a system where the action is taken not entirely by a human. Human in the loop is going to be really important in customer service or forever, right? And I think, part of the role change is this evolution of tier 2 and tier 3 agents to VIP agents. But non-human in the loop, like where we can fully automate. And so here we have advanced AI agents from Zendesk, and what they're doing is the same understanding of intent and sentiment and human language and the procedures that a company follows, and provide the ability for the customer, if they wish to drive themselves through that fully. So we have customers hitting, 80% automation rates on some of their implementations, of course, in part because they choose to automate 80%. And I think that's important to understand that, that is a decision. Not everyone is going to want to do that. If you're running a concierge team at the Four Seasons, you are unlikely to want, to take away human service completely. But you definitely want AI triage. You want the 24/7. You want it always on. You want to basically provide responses where it's Q&A. And so understanding your choices in the service journey are important. And so that automation, if we think about it, where if you're driving, using advanced AI agents up to 80% full resolution, then you're changing the nature of the tier 1 and tier 0 agents, the initial triage. And I think there, we expect more of those roles to be fully automated, if not all. And then the transition is, was that quality work, or is there a shift that can happen when there's people move into tier 2, tier 3 jobs because we have Copilot to level the playing field for service and to train. And then we have to acknowledge that service is sort of the last durable differentiator that is available to everyone without creative innovation, right? And so you can be creative in your customer support and you can provide more, and suddenly it got more cost effective. And so you can make sure that you're paying down that service debt and also differentiating as a company.
For everyone listening, replay that clip. That is one of the best articulations of what we mean by human first AI. Everything about that was, filled with empathy and, thinking about what's best for the customer and the experience. I want to unpack, lots to unpack in that one. Today's episode is brought to you by my company, PeopleRain. As you hopefully know, PeopleRain is the AI platform that automates work. Tens of millions of employees around the world get back 4 to 6 hours per week because PeopleRain automates away the friction. Imagine a world where your teams never have to wait for technology upgrades or to have a human reset their password or get added to a distribution list, or get help with payroll, PTO, or benefits. Inbox zero for the help desk, zero friction for employees. That's the future of work. That's PeopleRain. We're offering all members of Team Human, and hey, that's you, our listeners, an exclusive discount on PeopleRain just for being part of this amazing community. Get the discount code at peoplerain.io/podcast. That's PeopleRain, like the reign of a king or queen.io/podcast. Now back to this week's conversation. I want to start with, you made an important comment about the distinction between non-deterministic, which most of the world has experienced, how AI is generative in nature, but versus in our world, what really matters is deterministic. And you want to, as quickly as possible, migrate or graduate from non-deterministic interactions to deterministic, because we've got to deliver the right answer consistently every single time. And that's a very different experience than what most people have with AI. How do you think about kind of navigating that that distinction or that divide between non-deterministic and deterministic?
I think it's sort of uncomfortable for a product developer and a computer scientist, and it takes a little moment to get used to, right? But at the same time, why are these systems non-deterministic? Because they're generative, right? Because they are creative, because that they have agency. And I think the builders of the world right now are really creatively trying to make sure that with guardrails in place, they can leverage those capabilities to take on ever more complex tasks. I used to joke internally, right, that product development in an era of generative AI, where you're deploying generative AI, is basically the welding of guardrails onto very steep staircases, right? That's just what we're doing. I think we've moved past that point. I think understanding the rituals and processes of your own users, again, thinking about those personas of, admin, agent, consumer, and how, consumer, employee, whatever. I think thinking about the rituals that they have and how we can add either value or make more efficient or do things is the way that we need to be thinking about it. At the same time, there are some, like Zendesk, for example, sells a quality assurance tool to our users, right? And internally, we run lots of quality assurance on models and have all of these ways of detecting these things. But I think quality assurance is a great example of what you can do when you have a data center filled with, when you have a sort of zero marginal impact, cost impact intelligences that you can deploy. So what can you do? It's like, well, you can go from the way that we used to do quality assurance in customer service, which is sampling 3 to 5% of tickets at the high end and reading them and scoring them. And then we'd have a sit down, you and I, Dan, and I'd be like, Dan, seems like you're having a couple of grammar problems, mate. You need to speak a little clearer. Probably things I would say to you, but you get the idea. We've gone past that, right? Because I can actually use an LLM and read every single ticket. And I can read every single ticket, and I can score it on like 15 or 20 axes, and get into tone and resolution and quality and adherence to policy and everything else. And ultimately, one of the most important things that Zendesk looks at, because it's how the unit economics are driven for our AI agent, is did we answer the customer's question, right? And so we have a model, it runs in AWS with Anthropic's Claude model, a frontier model to answer that question, because it's such an important question for us. On the other side, though, our customers have been creative, right? And so customers in the gaming industry might be running their own evaluations of every ticket saying, did it sound like, Dan has a gambling problem if you're in the gaming industry? Did it sound like, Dan is underage? Did Dan express any feelings of desperation? All of these things that are nuanced that previously only a human could do. And you were looking at, your 100,000, 10,000 customer service agents to do the right thing and follow procedure. You can now take those and use an intelligence to deal with that. And I think that's where the non-determinism, the creativity, and the understanding really come in. And so for me, it's finding, you used the phrase earlier, product market fit, and then making it, a big principle at Zendesk is democratization of that technology. If you're a Zendesk customer, the worst thing I can do is give you an errand to run. Like, here's a new feature, Dan. I got a bunch of errands for you to run now, and you're going to need some new processes of control. You don't have time for that. That's a thing we can do in software. That's a thing we can do in product. That's a thing we can do in design. And so merging all of those thoughts, all of those ideas together is how we're building these creative features with empathy for the roles that we're serving and making sure that we're adding value to those roles.
So you mentioned the concept of guardrails, putting guardrails on a steep staircase specifically. And one of the things about the non-deterministic part of these workflows is that the more creativity or agency we give them, the more we risk unintended consequences. And in our world, the unintended consequences, they can be dire. They can impact health, well-being, personal safety. They can also be, just the screenshot moments where we've all seen the Cadillac Escalade get sold for a penny, or the transcontinental flight or something, it becomes free. So you're always going to want that non-deterministic experience to be fluid, but you're also responsible for the unintended consequences that happen when we're dealing with statistical models. How do you think about building in those guardrails?
I think what is great is, we stand upon the shoulders of giants, right? There's an enormous open source movement. These models many of them are, in the public domain. And you can get a really deep understanding of how they work. And similarly, the technology around evaluation platforms and monitoring platforms is growing. And then finally, there are certification bodies set up to measure and monitor just these things, right? Zendesk was one of the first companies in the industry to get ISO 42001 certification, which is kind of responsible AI. We also have level 1 and 2 star AI certifications from the Cloud Security Alliance. These are important sort of, you need the checks and balances that you used to get, like, is this credit card handler PCI, or is this, data handler SOC 2 type 2? And I think good standards, accreditation and industry practices are extremely important. But honestly, nothing is as important as a good testing framework and as a good understanding of the problem you're solving and how much latitude you have within that problem space to apply agency and beyond. You generally, with these models, with these things, with the way you build the algorithms, you're getting a confidence score. It's telling you how confident. If I pull a sentiment from a chat that you and I are having in a chat window, and it tells me I am extremely confident that Dan is frustrated, right? That's great, because you got 2 signals, not 1. And I can use that signal to say, perhaps now is not the time to offer Dan a coupon for upsell. Perhaps now is the time to solve this problem as efficiently as possible. There are ways that you can use these flows and do these things. So I think the joke in artificial intelligence, right, is the way that you solve a problem in artificial intelligence is with more artificial intelligence. And that is never more true than, I think, in the way that we are able to monitor and take care of these systems and make sure that the guardrails are in place and the welding seams are smooth.
One of the things that's coming up a lot is that in the AI developer community, talk about 2026 being the year of context engineering. And that's kind of a nerdy term. We should probably come up with a better one for it. But certainly in this space of automating customer support interactions, enriching the session, the conversation with a contextual awareness can dramatically reduce the statistical error and kind of improve the likelihood that there's going to be a successful outcome for the customer. I don't want to bait the witness here, but to the extent that's something you think about as a product organization, how do you think about the role of context engineering, and what do you think is ahead in terms of Zendesk, but also the AI developer space in general?
Yeah, I think that that gets to the heart of maybe one of the weaknesses of the current LLM infrastructure, right? Like, if you think about it, you look at the ChatGPT window. Let's take that as an example. It's a blinking cursor. It's basically like MS-DOS in 1993. Maybe you're old enough to remember that. It was like C:/. Now what do you want to do? and there's no context. And it's true that I could use that and I could generate code probably a lot more efficiently than I could generate code at this point in my decrepitude. And, it could be much more productive. But at the same time, I might still learn and I might be better tomorrow, but it will be the same flashing C colon prompt tomorrow because we're not continuously learning and providing memory. If we put that into a customer service context, if we level up as an application builder above that infrastructure layer, which is, the not learning, frozen in time kind of knowledge, the way that you build good features in customer service is we are innovating to figure out how to put more and more context in, down at the base level into the prompt, but keep the prompt small enough that the model knows exactly what to do. And that's the tension, to a certain extent in LLM development, is like, how can I have it understand everything about Dan, or enough of what are the relevant things in this moment for it to understand about Dan? What are the relevant things in this moment for it to understand about my procedures in my business? What are the things it needs to understand in this moment about the tools that I would call to look up Dan's account and order information, right? To find out which benefit plan Dan is on as an employee, whatever it is. I think that is the magic, right? A new model from one of the frontier labs gets released. As we talk today, GPT 5.2 was released yesterday, and that's great. That model probably has incredible capabilities in the greatest minds of my generation kind of built that thing, and that's extraordinary, right? What the rest of us are doing is still kind of a little bit the same thing, which is figuring out how to, without blowing out the amount of information the model has to process to just say, "Hi, Dan, how are you doing today?" How to get that model to do the thing that I want it to do and really do give you the experience that you want to have. And as you say, that's all about context. Moving into the future, right? There's a lot of talk about, the length of your prompt when you ask a LLM a question. We call that the context window. And there's a lot of talk about, I think Google Gemini has 1 million plus, 2 million plus context window, which is great. But really what you don't want to actually, I don't want to give you instructions and keep telling you everything I've ever told you in the question, right? It's just a very inefficient way to kind of have that conversation. And so I think a lot of the innovation that's going to be really useful for business users as we go forward is this ability to have a continuous understanding of the job the thing is doing to learn on the job, right? At Zendesk, we have put together the continuous learning resolution loop. Like we drive our customers towards generating resolutions. To keep generating resolutions, increase the number of resolutions, we have to make recommendations of, you need to write this article. You need to put it in the knowledge base, and then we'll drive answers for users off it. You need to build a procedure for this type of ticket, which is coming up. This is how I would build it. You need to build, you need to call this, you need to get a REST API or some kind of integration with MCP. Getting nerdy now, sorry, apologize. But you need to basically connect to this backend system so I can know more about Dan when he talks to me, right? We, in our resolution learning loop, are trying to basically make it so that the thing learns. Eventually, I think model builders understand that if we're going to have, what is it that we want from an LLM, right? I'll speak for myself. It's great that models can take on, Sam Altman talked about them doing 5-second tasks, 5-minute tasks, 5-hour tasks, and eventually 5-day tasks, right? Which is great. That's only going to be valuable for me if it's got all of the context that I would have to perform that 5-day task, right? And so what we are looking for is more and more that personal assistant that is with us every day, that tomorrow, when I talk to it, remembers what I said, understands and has processed what I said to it yesterday, right? We learn things every day and then we dream to file them away is one theory of the brain, right? Models are not dreaming right now. They're not making those memories. And we need that, I think, to get to the next level of assistance. And until that point, there's a fantastic business for Zendesk, building those guardrails, building that memory, and building that continuous resolution loop, and vendors like us. And when those models do have that learning context, there are so many other fantastic applications that we can build on top. Imagine the CRM that you could build, where you could just ask it about every interaction with every customer all at once, right? It's like the person has followed them around for their entire history with you. It'd be extraordinary. I'm excited for that day.
I think it's not too far away. I am always going to be an AI enthusiast and an optimist. I think we're going to get the right patterns in place to exercise it responsibly. I think as we inject more or enrich the AI with more context, I think it gets smarter.
Do you know the quote I'm betting on for that, Dan? It's we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 5. I'm on the 5-year cycle, but I want you to be right.
You're not getting off the hot seat without answering one last question, and it's related to that you just said. So let's say Adrian and Dan are back here in 5 years. It's the end of 2030, and we're having a version of this conversation. I believe that to be true. We're underestimating what we can achieve in the next 5 years. But gosh, sitting here today, it's hard to even know how big to dream. What, let's just take through the narrow lens of the CX, the customer experience space. What does the world look like then that maybe would shock the 2025 version of Adrian and Dan?
I think if we have, I wonder, right? And I'd love to hear your opinion too. Like, if you have something which has captured and preserved all institutional knowledge about everything in your company as an intelligence and has a reasoning ability. And, there are so many things that we do as humans, right? And we often get, I certainly do, get hung up on sort of the intelligence of the model. How well does it do on humanity's last exam? Is someone going to solve the Riemann hypothesis? Customer service is not solving the Riemann hypothesis, one of the unsolved mysteries of mathematics. Customer service is about institutional knowledge, context, and connection. And so I am excited to solve those problems because I do think it unlocks so much potential. I think in general life, by the way, I'm not sure if I'm scared or excited about the educational possibilities of that. What would it be for a child to have a lifetime personal tutor that could up-level them constantly, right? Would give everyone access to that for free for the rest of their life. There's all these things that we can do, and those things for me aren't about super intelligence. They're about super context. They're about super utility through, I don't want to say companionship, but through the preservation of knowledge and the continual learning loop that can be built on top of that knowledge.
Adrian, will you come back another time, and can we just pick up there and talk about kind of the philosophy and what it means to be a human in an age where we're partnering, or maybe our peer is is artificial, but like, what does that do to us as humans? I think that when we solve the AI problem, we've solved the human problem, and I hope that we're talking at that altitude, in 5 years about what we've accomplished. So please take me up. You have an open offer to come back.
Love to. Thanks so much, Dan. Wonderful to chat. I really appreciate the invitation.
I truly have been looking forward to this one. I've heard so many good things, and I want to make sure this is the first of many. But just brilliant to have you on. Gosh, that is more than the time we have for this week on AI and the future of work. That's the brilliant Adrian McDermott from Zendesk, and of course, I'm your host, Dan Turchin from PeopleRain, and we'll be back next week with another fascinating guest.
Yo, it's the end of the show, time to power it down. AI's the sis, but humans wear the crown. Team Human in the house, got the vibe so clever. Dan Turchin from PeopleRain, making us better. We learned about AI for humans. We're ready to conquer the future, that's all for now. See you next time.